Morning everyone, coffee time. I finally got my hands on the one Seamaster I wouldn't mind owning. The problem is it's got one huge flaw. Let's get into it. Yes, and welcome to the Mad Watch Collector channel. Today's show could not be done without the help of Watchfinder, the biggest seller of pre-owned luxury watches in the UK. Now today's Omega Seamster is not just any ordinary Seamaster, it's a Bond one. Now sorry, call me old-fashioned, but when I think of James Bond, one, I think of Roger Moore. I was brought up watching him with my mum and dad and brother, and when I think of a James Bond watch, I think of this absolute stunner, the Rolex Submariner 5513. A watch that was issued to the British military, particularly the Royal Navy, and James Bond started his career off in the Royal Navy. So that makes sense. After the late 80s of Timothy Dalton and James Bond, the 90s were all about flashy, big and bold things. And it wasn't Rolex on the wrist of James Bond anymore, it was Omega, which is still great, as Omega has an even bigger military history than Rolex does. Fast forward on to 2019, it's now a burly, rough and tumble Daniel Craig as James Bond. He still wears an Omega, but he had a say in this special edition Seamaster. And it's the first Seamaster I've ever thought, that looks quite good. So I am very excited to show it off to you today. Is it worth the price tag? Do I recommend it to you? There's only one way to find out. Are you, James Bond, ready? Let's go. So here it is, the Omega Seamaster Professional 300. And what an absolutely handsome devil this is. Straight away you're thinking vintage. There's a definite nod to the past. Maybe not Omega's past, but still. But there's certain style choices and designs that Omega are thinking a little bit more backwards than they are forwards. Which for me is brilliant. The colour of the watch may turn off people straight away. You may not even like James Bond and not want to watch this at all, but just hang on. Now when Pierce Brosnan's Omega Seamaster came out in the early 90s, it was ridiculously blingy for an MI6 special agent. I mean, the subtlety's gone out the window, there's polishing all over the bracelet, it's now blue, the dial is wavy, and it's more, come and see me! Even when I watched GoldenEye for the first time and I was about 14, I never understood why Pierce Brosnan had such a blingy watch. Omega were clever, it pops off the wrist, doesn't it? Great marketing and getting the most out of the millions of dollars they pay the James Bond franchise. But that blingy watch for an ex-Royal Navy soldier, now undercover spy, it didn't sit right with me. Now, very interestingly, Daniel Craig was asked what sort of Seamaster you would like, or you think James Bond would like, for this new movie. And he basically said what I thought back in '94, I don't want it to be blingy. No polishing whatsoever. So the best material for Omega to use is titanium. With grade 2 titanium, you can't polish it. It's 30% lighter than stainless steel, it's a darker colour than stainless steel, and it's the perfect undercover, subtle, tough elegance for a James Bond of the modern era. He obviously said to Omega as well, James Bond doesn't like a date window, even though I'm not too fond of you as a James Bond, Daniel Craig.
Bless you for not wanting a date window.
Now I can almost guarantee Daniel Craig said to Omega, can we get rid of the helium escape valve please? Because how many times in the modern era is James Bond gonna go saturation diving? Zero! But Omega obviously said no. But first impressions, I really like the look of this watch. Quick spec check! The dimensions are pretty much the same as a regular Seamaster 300, 42mm in diameter, 12.2mm thick, 48 lug to lug, and a strapaholic 20mm lug width. This watch is slightly thinner because it doesn't have a display case back. Like the regular ones, we've got a domed sapphire crystal protecting the dial just to add to that vintage look, a signed screw down crown and a screw down case back. This watch gives us 300 meters of water resistance. A great feature of this watch is the case back, and oh god, yes, I could be a Bond, couldn't I? Better yet, I could be a Bond villain. No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die underneath my huge display case back. I'll squish you. And welcome to another episode of The Design House, where today we are looking at an Omega and a special edition thanks to James Bond. Very excited today because I know that this watch houses the exquisite Co-Axial escapement. I can't wait to see it. Let's take a look. So, there's no display. Rather sad and disappointing, has to be said. We have the broad arrow hand, signifying that this is Ministry of Defense property. We have 0552. That's the code number specified for Navy personnel. The 9237697. Well, that specifies it's a diver's watch. The letter A signifies that this is a watch with a screw-down crown. 007 for obvious reasons. And the 62 celebrates the first year of the first James Bond. Dr. No. I'm very interested with this Naiad lock system. When you screw the case back, the way the threading works, the text will always be upright, perfectly aligned. So there you go, a very disappointing case back for me. But whatever is good enough for James Bond is certainly good enough for me. I'll see you for another episode of The Design House. Cut. Very nice, very nice, Mr. Bond. Would you like to stroke my cat?
Could you just click that like button, please? It really helps the channel. Thank you.
Onto the bezel. It's scalloped edge titanium, 120 click, unidirectional. We have an ironized aluminium insert, which has a brown tone to it to match the dial. Loom pip at 12 o'clock. Let's see how it does in the World Bezeling Federation. Hi, I'm Kurt Santana, and welcome to the World Bezeling Federation. Dedicated to find the best bezel on a watch. 3 rounds, the look, grip, and fidgetability. Let's get a bezeling. This Seamaster 300 is fully titanium with an aluminum insert. The scalloping around the bezel has no coin or serrated edge, so I can't see it being over grippy, but a nice one nonetheless. And onto the grip. Is the ratcheting too light or too tough? Well, I have to say that this is a very loose bezel. Looser than a goose's loose bits. The 120 clicks are very light, and if I was 007, I wouldn't be too confident using this for diving. And onto the fidgetability. How much do I want to twist this bezel? Morning, noon, and night. Well, I feel the more you turn the bezel, the looser this is gonna get, thus degrading the value and making the fidgetability-ness not that good. And unfortunately for the Omega No Time to Die, that does not put it on the all-time leaderboard. Okay, gotta go. Time for a cheeseburger. Super! And this is a big deal breaker for me. Over £8,000 for this watch, and the bezel action feels loose. It doesn't sound nice. Now, I've handled 3 of these watches, and they've all had similar bezel actions. Now, speaking to people that have just bought these watches, they tell me that the bezel action is great with no playback, which tells me that after a while of twisting this thing, they are all gonna wear a bit and feel really loose. Very light. Have a listen anyway. But there is so much wiggle there. This is an expensive watch. And unfortunately for all you that own this watch and love twisting the bezel, don't twist it too much because it feels like it could pop off. Now, it may have something to do with the construction, the lightness of titanium, but hang on, I reviewed the Pelagos 39 a few weeks ago, and that bezel action was absolutely magnificent. Okay, let's look at the face. Dial time. And I gotta say, I absolutely love it. And the applied markers, which are titanium, are filled with what can only be described as a latte color. I also love the popper red from the Seamaster printing, as well as the tip of the seconds hand. The 3 hands are also made from titanium, and the texture on those are quite special. One thing I'm not 100% on is the broad arrow hand on the dial. This watch was made and worn by a fictional character. He does work for the MI6. So in theory, he would be issued a watch from the Ministry of Defense. But does that downgrade and disrespect the actual watches Omega made in the past that were actually issued to servicemen and women? And honestly, I don't know where I sit with it. Omega had to have got permission from the Ministry of Defense, and in theory, the watch you paid £8,000 for could be whipped away from the Ministry of Defense right away. Anyway, being British and proud of our military history, I do like the broad arrow hand. So this is an interesting one for me. We've got loom on the bezel insert, loom on the triangle pip, loom on the hands and the hour markers. Out of 10, let's see how this glows. Whoa, I was not expecting this. This watch is a shower in the nighttime. You don't get a loomed bezel on a regular Seamaster 300, so this is exclusive to this special edition. Top work, Omega! So powering this watch is a very special movement. The in-house caliber 8806. It's chronometer and METAS certified. This means that not only the movement has been tested, but it's also been tested once it's in the case. It uses the very famous Co-Axial escapement, which highly regarded watchmaker George Daniels created in '76 and then patented in 1980. The escapement is basically the mechanism that releases the power and energy to give the accurate time and to move those hands around. Basically what the coaxial does is take away a lot of the friction of this, which can wear parts and ups the length of time for servicing the watch. This puppy is a master chronometer and is accurate to plus or minus 0 to 5 seconds a day, 35 joules and a power reserve of 55 hours.
Hello.
On my 6.5-inch wrist, and I absolutely love it. Only a lug to lug of 48 millimeters, so it does sit nicely on my wrist. It's very light because it is titanium. There is anti-reflective coating on the inside of that crystal. It's debatable how good it is. This watch either comes on a Milanese strap or this NATO strap. I absolutely love these colors. They go so well with the watch, really feels premium, and all the hardware is titanium just like the case. But on wrist with this NATO, it looks awesome and ready for action. We've got a new segment for the channel in 2023, the epic magical macro montage. The segment that just goes to show even luxury watches over £8,000 have their imperfections. Lovely. So there you go, the No Time to Die Seamaster 300 Professional. For me, it's definitely the first Seamaster I've actually liked the look of. Some might not like the faux patina look, but this colour was also chosen to go under the radar. I love the no date. It wears very well on my wrist. The case back is cool. And I guess this is the first titanium sports watch I've quite liked. The bezel, if you're spending over £8,000, over £9,000 if you choose the Milanese bracelet, you need to have a refined bezel action. I'm on the fence with the broad arrow. I don't think we should be messing about with a serious symbol. Now the regular Seamaster 300 Professional with the display case back and the wavy dial is £5,500. That is a big cost difference. Reasons for it? Well, the titanium structure, but also the 007 tax, isn't it? God knows what Omega have had to pay the James Bond franchise to put James Bond on the case. So I do see this watch having some value to it, and I really like the fact that Omega went back in time a bit to make a great undercover diver. But next time, get rid of the helium escape valve. I bet the next James Bond won't even be able to swim. Here it is, my wife's thoughts on the Omega No Time to Die Seamaster 300. Yes, I quite like this. I love the colours. Looks very caramelly. Why has it got two twisty knobs? Love the strap. How much? She was all good up until the price. I'm sorry, but for me, James Bond should only be wearing one watch, and that is a Rolex Submariner. Unfortunately, the Rolex Submariner today is not the brutalistic, tool-tastic, rough and tumble Rolex of the 5513 Roger Moore wore in Live and Let Die. For the price of this Omega Seamaster Special Edition, you could go on Watchfinder's website and get a 1990s pre-ceramic 14060. That is still a stunner. But to balance this out a little bit, Omega absolutely smashes Rolex when it comes to movements, don't they? Do you think I've made everyone happy now? Nah. Thank you for watching till the end. If you'd like more of the Mad Watch Collector channel, why don't you click here and join? And if I've got you for a few more minutes, why don't you check this one out? This is a great show. full of delight, happiness, pleasure, positivity. You always get that with the Mad Watch Collector show. Go on, click it, click it, click it!